Hello and welcome to Traditional Painting the Digital Way. This is where I use digital painting apps to teach traditional painting techniques. This is part 2 of my Country Road video series, and in this video we're going to add the road, the grass, and the trees. If you're following along traditionally, check out part 1 in this series where I have a list of all the paint, brushes, and canvas materials that I use. The app that we're going to be using for this lesson is ArtRage 5. We're going to start by adding in the background trees, and these are going to be really distant trees, so we want to use a light color for the trees. So we're going to try and use a light purple color, and you can mix dioxazine purple with a little bit of burnt sienna and white acrylic gesso to get this light purple look in the background. And the brush I'm going to be using for ArtRage, I'm trying to find the rough foliage brush, and it's actually some of the new brushes that they've added. And you can find it in the textures brush at the bottom. And if you're following along traditionally, you'll want to use your number 10 bristle brush, and don't get a lot of paint, but get it right on the end of your brush and just lightly tap on your canvas. And you want just kind of a rough look, and you want the bristles to spread out on the end, because you want these trees to look kind of uneven and sort of rough and jagged. We don't want them to look all the same. We want this to look like there's a whole bunch of different kind of leafy trees in the background here. So just go ahead and add that a little bit over the bottom of your clouds, because you want it to overlap a little bit, because we're trying to show depth there. And make sure you keep the bottom of your trees sort of soft. We don't want a hard line, because if you're following along traditionally in acrylic, the hard line will be hard to get rid of. And sometimes it also is when you're painting digitally. So just go ahead and tap all those trees in. And then the next thing that we need to work on is the grass. And so the distant grass is going to be a light yellow color. Use phthalo yellow green or cadmium yellow light. Just throw in a really light color. And here's what I like to do with grass. This is one of my favorite tricks, and this works traditionally and it works digitally in ArtRage. Not many programs have this feature, but ArtRage 5 actually has this feature. And you just take some thick paint and smear it on your canvas, and make sure that it's really thick. Don't blend it in yet. And use all the different colors that you want for your grass. Use phthalo yellow light, throw in a little bit of cadmium orange, throw in some hooker's green or pine green, throw in a little bit of dioxazine purple, and just smear all that on your canvas. And what you're going to do is you're going to take your dry clumps brush in ArtRage, or if you're following along traditionally, take your number 10 bristle brush and pat it against the canvas, and just kind of smear it in and pull it up lightly towards the top of your canvas if you're doing this traditionally. And also use that kind of a stroke on your canvas in ArtRage. And here I'm using the hard out smudge brush in ArtRage, the blending brush, and that will give you the kind of look the same kind of look that you'll get using a number 10 bristle brush if you're following along traditionally. And just keep using that stroke, just pull it up towards the top of your canvas, and this gives you kind of a naturalistic look of a whole bunch of very thick grass. And do this on both sides. If you're near the horizon, you kind of can smooth horizontally. And then as you get nearer to the foreground, you can go ahead and start patting it, and patting your brush on the canvas and using an upward stroke here. And so the hard out smudge brush works really well for this in ArtRage. And You want to go ahead and play around with the blending a little. I decided to add the knife edge blending there just to get a few blades of grass look to it, and then I used the harsh chaos just to soften the grass on the edges and the distance a little bit. And you can use your bristle brush to do that. Just tap it very lightly and pull up just a little bit. And then I wanted to go ahead and add in the road, and we're just underpainting it right now. So you want some burnt sienna, maybe some burnt umber, and we're just trying to put in the shape of the road. And I'm using the Bristle 7 brush in ArtRage, and also the normal round. And if you're following traditionally, you can use your number 10 bristle brush, you can use your number 8 filbert, just something that will make some nice horizontal strokes, and keep the strokes horizontal on your road, because otherwise it's going to look like it'll be falling off your picture, and it won't look right. So make sure that the strokes of your road are kept horizontal. And then you can add some purples in, add some dark umber, throw in some cadmium orange light, just throw in a whole bunch of different earthy tones for this. And the purple will sort of make the shadowed tone as you get closer to the foreground of your picture. You want to smudge these colors together, so you can use the hard out smudge brush in ArtRage 5, and you can just smudge it with your finger or a paper towel if you're following along traditionally. Here I'm just throwing in a little bit of purple, and sometimes when the colors blend sort of weird, like you don't want them to in ArtRage 5, just add a new layer and then go ahead and blend the color on that layer and then collapse it down. And that will give you more of the colors of what you want, because sometimes the purple and the burnt sienna blend together and make sort of a reddish color, which I don't want as much. I wanted a darker purple color. So you can go ahead and do that, and then I collapse the layers just to keep the file from getting too large, and make the performance of ArtRage better, because it gets kind of laggy on my Surface Pro 3. And then here I'm working on the tree. You want to go ahead and get some burnt sienna, add some cadmium orange with it. You can use your number 6 flat brush if you're following traditionally. I'm using the Everlasting Oil brush in ArtRage 5, which means that it doesn't run out of paint. It's not made like a natural brush that would run out of paint. This one just keeps on giving you the oil texture that you want, and it never does run out. And I'm making the crooked branches. You want your branches to look crooked and old and gnarled here, because it's an old dead tree. And go ahead and use dark umber for this color, and make your brush small so that you can make these thin branches. Use your long script brush if you're following along traditionally, and use a thin mixture of dark umber or some of your brown paint. Go ahead and keep the trunk sort of jagged looking. You don't want it to look like it's just a pole standing out there. You want it to look jagged, like it's in the grass. And just keep working on the branches. Make sure that they're thicker at the bottom and thinner at the top. That's something that you have to watch whenever you're adding branches on there. Keep adding the brown colors, and work on the trunk a little. Make sure that it's thicker at the bottom so that it looks natural. And then you can add a little bit of a highlight on the left side. Use cadmium orange light with some burnt sienna and a lot of white. Make jagged strokes on here. We don't want a solid line. We want them kind of broken. So you can use your script brush for that if you're following along traditionally, and just you can kind of blend them in. And I'm using the blender a little bit just to smudge them in a little, and you can smudge them in with your finger if you're following along traditionally. And then here I'm putting in some twiggy bushes, just a few bushes around the tree, and that's just to set it back. and give the picture a sense of depth. And you can use darker colors for these bushes. And then here I'm going to go ahead and add in the fence posts, and we're going to do this in 1-point perspective, so make sure that the posts, as they go further into the distance, are smaller and closer together. As they get nearer the foreground, they're going to be larger and they're going to be wider apart. But remember that simple rule that things as they go further into the distance are going to get smaller and closer together. This is the end of part 2 of our Country Road series. And in part 3, we're going to be adding all the final touches, including adding the wildflowers and putting in the wire on the old fence and just highlighting the road and just adding all the last little details that you need to make a finished painting. So thanks everybody for watching. Thank you so much for your support. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments down below, and I will catch you later.